Well, welcome, and I am your host, and my name is Britton. Today, I just wanted to get on here before we start our conversation and let you know that I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I speak to people that are in those professions, and this channel is for information only. Hopefully, it's good information that you can apply to your life. So, as I speak to those guests, and if you feel like you want to support any of those, some of them are authors, blogs, mental health advocates. They have foundations, not for profits. If you want to support those people, I'll put the links in the description below. Also, if you'd like to support the Suicide Monk podcast and help keep this moving forward, I'll put that GoFundMe in the link below. I'll put the link down there for the Ashes to Life coaching as well. And don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps us keep moving forward. And any prayers, lifting up, good vibes, we will take them. Thanks a lot. Again, we'll see you on the good side. Well, welcome to the Suicide Monk, and I am your host, and my name is Britton. Today we have Lisa Quinto, and she's from the Northwest, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So she's, you have a horse ranch. Is that correct? And you do therapy with that? Yeah. Okay. I thought I understood that correctly. And then, you empower. Is it just mothers, or is it parents for addiction recovery?
I like to say that I work with mothers, but then I include everyone. It could be family members, it could be friends, it could be anybody who's touched by, someone who's struggling with addiction and recovery. Yeah.
That's amazing. I know a lot of times we try to gear that towards like what we know, and that's been a mother of somebody who's been addicted. So that makes sense. And it's good that we can allow the space for others too. So that's, I appreciate that. Then you do motivational speaking, and through this process, if I've heard right, you have found a spiritual foundation or reclaimed one, per se.
I would say it's a little of both. Yeah.
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 Can you, what was it like growing up for you? What kind of give us a background on who you are and what your life was like?
I grew up in this area in the Northwest, grew up in the Seattle area, and was quote unquote diagnosed with being autistic. It's not autistic, dyslexic. When I was in about third grade and second to third grade. So starting in third grade, got bused from where I lived in North Seattle to the inner city, which I'd never experienced before. We lived in the suburbs. My parents were what I like to call conservative hippies. Like they really into being outdoors. We did a lot outdoors. We were very active with our family, very much family oriented. So moving from the suburbs in school to the inner city, I had no idea what I was stepping into.
Yeah.
And that was, being in a school with kids that were either really like struggling mentally, and then the emotionally struggling with broken homes and a lot of diversity, a lot of Black kids, Hispanic. Not that we didn't have that in our neighborhood, but I was a minority in that school. I was no longer, I was in with a lot of kids that were dealing with a lot of issues that I know adults don't deal with well, which was just a lot of trauma. And that resulted in me being bullied a lot. I was little. I was probably in the bottom 30 percentile of height and weight at third grade. I was, the size of a kindergartner. I was little. I'm still not. I'm only 5'2", so I'm a little person. And but I grew up in a household with a mother who encouraged me to just don't let anybody tell you what to do. You do what you feel like is right. Like, I was never told that I was small and that meant that I couldn't do things. So when I started having my lunch money taken from me, uh, I said no. And these big kids were sixth graders, I'm imagining, the size bigger than my parents, black boys that knew that I was coming from somewhere else and had money with me every day. And after about the second or the third time of me saying no, things started to get a lot more violent, with throwing me down the stairs and beating me up and telling me that if I told anyone, they were going to kill my family. And so then that started with I'm sick. I don't feel good. I don't want to go to school. Not saying I didn't want to go to school, but coming up with excuses of why I couldn't go to school.
Right.
And that lasted throughout that whole school year. Then the following year, that would have been fourth grade. So then the following year in fifth grade, we went to a different school. And at that school, not completely different. The difference was I was with kids in wheelchairs who were nonverbal, who were really like struggling with like daily taking care of themselves. And at that point in fifth grade, I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why am I here? What's wrong? Why am I here with these children? And then at the same time going, these are people. These aren't throwaway people. These are people. And it was at that point, about halfway through, that my parents realized I was reading at a first grade reading level. And we're like, this can't continue. This is just awful. We need to move somewhere where we're going to have better education for our kids. And so then we moved up to Edmonds. I went into basically just
Is
into
that
the
where
school
the
system.
dyslexia diagnosis came in
Yeah, well, when I was
during?
when I went into fourth grade, I was I was told I was dyslexic, and I am. I'm dyslexic, but that got me sent to the inner city school because I can't be with the main school because they don't know how to deal
Right.
with someone with dyslexia,
Yeah.
right?
Back then
And
they didn't know
no,
there were certain things that they really didn't understand. So you have
no,
more integration today, and that's what we're kind of talking about. There's a time frame
yeah.
there,
So there
especially
was a
during.
lot of bullying that went on all through school, all through, elementary school, middle school, high school, um, to the point to where, I did not understand what was wrong with me. I did not understand what was so wrong with me that I was being bullied all the time. And I think the thing that happens with bullying that maybe is or isn't talked about enough is when you go to your parents and say, this is what's happening, I need help. And the answer I got was, just ignore them. It's just because they like you. It's just because of this. It's just because of that. It's not that big a deal. And it turned into then, well, how I feel isn't that big a deal either. Like, I can't trust what I'm feeling because everyone else thinks it's okay. Why do I think it's so wrong? So you start questioning yourself. And that led to a lot of problems as my life went on. That took me to some dark places. Yeah.
Yeah, you were. Did you attempt suicide at 16, or were you just,
Yeah.
or was it the ideology of suicide
No,
what
it
began?
was with a couple of friends at my home. Um and just in a really dark place, and put a shotgun in my mouth. Was ready to just be done with it. And luckily I was with someone else that took that away and said, this isn't this isn't the answer. And there was alcohol involved. There was alcohol involved. And that person that helped me with that, that's when I realized like that this is not the answer. I don't know what the answer is, but this isn't the answer. The way that we had a conversation after that was, when you've been in a place where you just feel like you can't take that pain anymore, you don't think about what's left behind. You're only thinking about not living in this space anymore. And that really opened my eyes at that point. And this had been thoughts of suicide for years, of like, I can't take this anymore. Like, no one listens to me. No one thinks this is real. No one understands how dark a place this is, how alone it is. So yeah. Yeah.
When did those suicidal that ideology kind of creep in? Do you have an idea of about
It was
what
around
age
middle
you were?
school. It's probably around middle school, around, 13, 14,
Okay.
when, your boys are becoming the thing. And um
Well, you're going
I'm
through hormonal changes
yeah.
as a female at that point too,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
So
being in special
you have yeah.
education and feeling like, I'm not like other people. Um the sense of not belonging, as I've learned as I've gone along in life, like the feeling of not belonging is is huge to anyone, but
Yeah.
especially and when you're a teenager. Yeah.
I my they tried to put me in special ed when I was a kid, and I fought tooth and nail because I was already alone. Kids already did not want to be around me, and then they're going to put me in a special ed class with um, handicapped kids,
Right.
in the wheelchairs um, and mentally disabled. And it was destructive for me. It wasn't because I was handicapped. I'm actually pretty intelligent. It's because I was shattered. I was broken. I was yeah, and they didn't know what to do with me, and that was the answer back then. Was oh, they have learning disability, or they're not learning because they're handicapped, and it's like no, I'm not
Right.
learning because every day I go home, the un the unknown is going to happen, and
Right.
and so that was, I mean, we get there in different boats, but we end up in the same realm, and that's the fascinating thing for me. Now we have a lot more understanding of how intelligent handicapped kids are, honestly, and
Absolutely.
and um, they're not they're kind of they were the forgotten society for a long time, um, and now it's like if you want wisdom, look at a child, look at somebody who's handicapped, they see something that we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. I would 100% agree with that. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's
so the, when as you walked through this thing, you ended up homeless at one point.
Yep.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
How did
20.
that all occur? How did that
Yeah.
come about?
That's like a novel I could write. So I'm going to take it down to the very small version of that. But unfortunately, with being kind of told that, you know, I all through school, because it's so interesting. I had a wonderful family, but when
That's
they
what it
don't
sounds like.
believe you, when you say things are going on or they downplay it, you start to not believe them and believe what everyone else is saying, which is, you don't belong, or you're this, that, or the other thing. And So by the time I'm 21, I meet this guy, and I'd had a couple of boyfriends before. But I met this guy, and he convinced me. He was probably the first narcissist that I ever had a relationship with. And he convinced me that, I didn't have to put up with anything. And um as he built me up and tore me down at the same time, uh I'm pregnant at 21 with no place to live, and then have this infant at just 22, and we're homeless. And we ended up either living in a car or surfing on couches or sometimes in a tent, just wherever we could go, until
With a baby.
with an infant, until I got to I think at that point my daughter was about 6 or 7 months old. We were living in a small apartment, and at that point finally we had a place to live, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And so I decided to leave, and contacted my family and asked if I could come home, and of course they said yes. And that ended that point,
Why didn't you do that in the first place?
because
What
he
was
convinced me that I couldn't, that they didn't love me, that they, just all of the narcissistic things that happened. My friend network was gone at that point, just, that narcissistic,
so your
relation.
safety and security lied in him instead of
Right,
the things that you knew
right.
within yourself, and that's
And
that
I
your
would just
family
believe all
was
his
available.
lies. No,
Right.
he'd
Yeah.
tell me whatever he thought I wanted to hear. Uh, and then at one point, I think I just had enough and just decided, this was never going to change. Like this situation was never going to change. And I want to say that was a bit of a spiritual awakening, where God said, this is not where you're supposed to be. This is I have other plans for you. You need to leave here. And so I did, and went back in with my parents for about 4 years, and
Okay.
until about 3 years, I guess, and then moved out on my own. And but that time being homeless was the absolute best thing that could have ever happened to me, even though it was awful, because it taught me where I didn't want to be. I don't ever want to be here again,
That's a hard
because there
lesson to learn.
it is a hard lesson to learn, and it kept me going in a form of, if this isn't where you want to be, focus on where you do want to be. Because I learned as I was homeless that that was never going to change if my mindset didn't change. My mindset didn't change about where I wanted to be instead of where I was. That's where I would always be. That you're just going to stay here. And that's what happens to a lot of people who are in bad situations, whether they're homeless or something else, is the confirmation bias of, I guess this is as good as it gets. I don't see any other reality. I don't see how I can change this. And I really feel that faith is one of the things that helped me the most with, if you want something, if I wanted something different, not only did I have to do something different, I had to believe something different. I had to believe something different. So, I
How did
then,
you find a way to believing something different, though? We oftentimes, especially if you have a theological background or a religious background or even a spiritual background, um, and there's prayer life involved in that, because there's some spirituality that doesn't involve prayer life.
Mhm.
What I'm learning, how did you had it, was there some sort of teaching in your past that brought you back to a foundation that allowed you to have that kind of faith? Because faith is it's an overused term for a very difficult thing to have. And oftentimes a lot of people say they have faith when then why are you still resentful? Why are you still angry? Why are you, if you have true faith, then why are these things still affecting your life to a point where you're not moving forward? So, and I find this fascinating because I struggle with this myself. I'm not speaking out of turn on
Mhm.
this. Faith is a very, very difficult thing for me to have on a daily basis. So how did you, because it sounds like you may not have had somebody walking next to you at this point, but you came to realization on your own to meld yourself back into something to change your life, right? Am I kind of
Yes.
following? Okay.
And as I went along with, I guess it was somebody who always looked at what's the pattern? Is there a pattern? What's the pattern? As I became an adult, what's the pattern? And I noticed that one of the patterns with people that were homeless is I'll do this because I know the outcome. I'll do this because it's comfortable. I'll do this because fill in the blank of easy, right? And because I had been bullied, I also realized that I could do hard things. I had to my whole life. I had to do hard things, and a lot of times I had to do them by myself. Because I didn't have a network of friends that were in quote unquote special education that kind of even got how my brain worked, which is incredibly fast. I learned by the time I was about 28 or 25 that my brain worked faster than I could write or read or anything else. I was incredibly fast. And that was my problem, that I needed to slow down. And looking back on it now, that's the ADHD of just go, 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 go. I'm not someone who can just sit around all day. That's not who I am. I'm someone who needs to be physically busy at least part of the day. If it's the whole day, I'm really happy. If it's part of the day, I can do that. So I learned also how to hack that for myself, right? Prove to yourself, I don't know if I can do that. It was almost like my brain would go, prove it to yourself that you can. Try it. What can you do? If somebody told me I couldn't do something, I would be like, here, hold my drink while I do it twice. You're going to tell me I can't do it. I'll show you I can do it. And I could show you I'll do it better than you and faster than you. Like that was that very competitive part of my personality that I realized was my superpower around 25 when I was
So
like,
adversity actually motivated you.
big
It
time.
began to motivate you.
Yeah. Not when I was younger, but as I became a
Right.
young adult, yes, it became something where I'm like, and I also learned as I went along of like looking at people who were successful, what what makes them different than me? What is the reason why I can't have that? And a lot of times there was no reason. It was just I had to do the thing that most people don't do, which is show up.
Yeah. It's a big thing.
Show up. Show up and learn. Show up and ask questions. And um as I went along in life, I realized that I was really good at pushing myself beyond where most people would push themselves. I would just push myself to learn it, to do it, and not be so afraid to fail. So, yeah,
Failure is a big deterrent for um, people like me. Suicide ideology is severe because it's something that we've experienced our whole life.
right.
Every time we move forward, we get the rug pulled out and end up on our face, and then we have to get back up and try all over again and start over again. That's what kind of happens. Is there's this, we're just worn out. It's not that we're not strong,
Yeah,
but we're just worn out because we
yeah,
don't know how to move in any other direction per se. We're so consumed by the things of the past that hold us in concrete that we don't know how to climb walls, and we're too heavy, and we don't know how to navigate around, and we sure as hell don't have the strength to break through. So how do you guide people in the situations in this? Because as a well, I want to be careful here. As a parent, as somebody who understands addiction, not just as a parent, but uh, as a human being, and going through my own struggles as a child, or as a kid, I should say. How how has that affected you as a mother? What are some of those things on your side of it
Yeah.
that have really touched your heart and soul and kind of pushed you in the direction that you're in
Yeah.
right now?
So, my my daughter was very sick growing up, a lot of hospital time. So,
Really?
a lot
How
of
come?
serious. She had some kidney problems when she was really little, and then had a cholesteatoma on her eardrum bone that had her have 7 ear surgeries. She ended up losing her earring and her hearing in her left ear, but after each recovery, it was, "Can't run, can't jump, can't swim, can't ride a bike,
Right.
because your equilibrium will be off," and, 7 years of that, is it more than 7 years of 7 surgeries of that changes who you are because you don't not navigating life the same. So, by the time she's in high school, she's now falling behind, getting in with a bad crowd, trying to really keep her from that as much as I possibly could, knowing what I knew from growing up with homelessness and all the other things. Ultimately, by 18, she'd met someone that introduced her to hard drugs, and that kept her there for 15 years of some really, really dark places of,
What, like
jail
meth,
time, prison
heroin?
time, overdosing multiple times going through recovery, stealing from our whole family. Like, it was a 15 years of a lot of, like, stress is putting it mildly, trauma of
Yeah,
not knowing
that's
what's
15 years of hell is what that is.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean,
and,
there's when yeah, when you're not sure if you're going to get the call that this is the day, that
yep,
it was just one too
yeah,
many times.
yeah, yeah. I've written a book, I'm just working on getting it published and put out, but one of the things that I share in there is about, not having, about halfway through her addiction, I would say, maybe slightly more, um, getting a knock on the door. I was at home by myself, getting a knock on the door, a really loud knock, Snohomish County Sheriff, and I froze and was like, "Oh my god, she's dead." And I couldn't move. Get a knock again, Snohomish County Sheriff, open the door. Finally, I get to where I open the door, and I'm trying to ready myself to get this horrible news, and he says, "I'm looking for my daughter's name." And I'm like, "Oh, she's not dead." Like this, I almost collapsed just in the relief of, "Oh my gosh, she's not dead." I said, "I don't know where she is. I haven't talked to her in a couple of months. Um, I don't know where she is." And he said, "Harboring a fugitive is a felony." I said, I don't know where she is." And then it clicked. "Oh, she's got a warrant because they're looking for her." I'm like, "Oh, she got in trouble and my parents bailed her out again." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, It's serious. You can come in and look all you want. She's not here." But that was one of the many things that happened, the overdoses also of just horrible overdosing, that just very, very traumatic. And, in 2012, uh, I met a woman about 6 months. So that was in July of 2020. But about 6 months before that, I was a massage therapist, and I met a client who asked me to come out and go horseback riding with her. And after about the third time of doing that, I'm like, I have always wanted a horse. I'm going to buy myself a horse. And so started looked at about 12 different horses, found the horse that I just knew was the right horse. And everyone told me I was crazy. This is not the right horse for you. She's 15. She's older. She's not, we just don't know that this is going to be the right horse for you. And I said, I just know it. Ended up boarding her at a girlfriend's house. And this girlfriend of mine has had horses for 30 years. And she said, this is like a 2-year-old. She just never had a blanket on. She's never had water. I don't know if she's ever had a bath. Like, she doesn't know anything. This is like, she's sort of dangerous. And I'm like, I just know this is my heart horse. This is her. And those same people in the beginning that said, we think you should maybe choose a different horse. We'll help you rehome her. About a year and a half later, those same people said, can our grandkids ride your horse? Because I never gave up on her. I knew that she was the horse that was here to teach me something. I just knew there was a knowing. It's hard to explain when you have this knowing, and the knowing is what keeps you going no matter what the evidence is. And we ended up having a incredible relationship for 11 years, where she taught me so much about myself, about how to choose myself, because that was something I hadn't done for my whole life, but especially through my daughter's addiction. I was not choosing myself. I was constantly abandoning myself and sacrificing myself for her, not
Yeah.
walking
Tell
my
me
path.
about that a little bit.
Yeah. So,
For all those mothers out there that
yeah. So
that don't know what to
one of,
do.
yeah. So one of the things that, there's a couple of things. The first thing is like, I created my own addiction, which was working. I'd work 60 hours a week. So I didn't have to deal with any of it. I just didn't have time. I sacrificed my relationship with my younger daughter because I wasn't there for her. I was constantly trying to figure out what was happening with my other daughter, and in a constant state of, um, the only word that pops into my head is like this turmoil of what's going to happen next. When's the next shoe going to drop? Um, and not putting my own needs even on the table, let alone on my plate. It was, what do I need to do to save her? And one of the things that my horse taught me, which sounds strange, but my horse taught me, was you can't save someone who's unwilling to participate in their own rescue.
Yeah. If they keep throwing the life raft back or the preserver,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do. And that's a hard lesson to learn when it's your own kid.
It's brutal. It's brutal because for me, I was blaming myself instead of saying, this is her path. This is her path. I have to allow her to walk her path. It is not up to me. It's up to God as to how she navigates this, not me. I can't walk it for her. So having to show up for my horse all the time, I couldn't work 60 hours a week anymore. I was working a quote unquote normal schedule and making time for this relationship with my horse, which led me to being present, which allowed me to get what I would call like downloads from God. I would get messages from God of just like, go here, do this, take time for yourself. And the biggest one was let go. Let go. And I had an epiphany one day where, um, I realized that me continually trying to save her or do something for her, I was doing God's work. And I had to stop and say, your plan for her is not my plan for her. And I have to let go of that.
Tough one. Because, and even in what you're currently doing, understanding that somebody's weight is not your own. And then you add a kid to that where, uh, you know, as a woman, you've carried this child for 9 months. And, men don't quite understand what that is. We can have a bond
Right.
with our child, but we don't understand that bond.
Yeah.
So there's a profound, um, I would imagine, sense of guilt and shame
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
for them being in the current position that they're in. And I can
Yes.
tell you as a father and understanding addiction and growing up in it, and I spent 17 years in AA, or 14 years in AA, 17 years sober. So I understand addiction. I understand that, it wasn't as difficult for me to enter into this type of work because I've walked in it.
Mhm.
And I understand that I can't change that. But from a parent's perspective, we we would take the brunt. We'll take give it all to us so our child doesn't have to.
And I think one of the other things that I want to touch on that I feel like is really important is um, the relationship with my mother and how she continued to enable her even when I stopped, when I'd finally said, enough, I can't. I had to put up a boundary with her. I had to say to my daughter, I'm no longer available to give you or loan you money. I'm no longer available to save you in the middle of the night. I'm no longer available to buy you clothes for an interview you're never going to. I am available to meet you for a meal anytime. I am available for you to call me anytime. And that resulted in months of her not talking to me after continuing to ask me, and I had to continue to say no and then get pushback from my mom telling me that I'm a horrible mother for not helping her. Like, if you're not going to help her, I will. And having to have a conversation with my mother saying, if you're going to continue to help her, then we should go shop for her casket because you're killing her. And she just could not hear that. That was just something she could not hear. And I said, this isn't about not loving her. This is about you allowing her to walk her path. And that just was so foreign to her that she could never grasp that. So then I'm dealing with boundaries with my daughter and then boundaries with my mother because I'm like, I'm not, I'm not
So
available.
how did this, because this is a very difficult thing to do, especially for a mom, and that is to tell your child or give them the idea that, I mean, because to them it's abandonment. They're being abandoned. And you have to stand in that, knowing that you're not shutting a door. The door's wide open. It's just they can't come in while they're like that. And they can't come in and destroy the house and then leave. That's the point. And oftentimes that's what we let happen. There's something I'm discovering in my own life, and I feel like it goes, and I don't mean to belittle this at all. It goes a little bit beyond boundary, and although it's in the same field, it's I call it respecting myself. So I've set foundational things for myself, not for other people. Um, and now I get to choose to cross over those lines and give grace and lead way. And, but if I let them come past that line, then I have compromised my respect for myself. And I guess the way I've been viewing boundary is like I've it's like a hard wall, and I'm like, I don't want to have hard walls in my life. I want to find balance. So I guess I'm also trying to figure that out. Like, what does that really mean? What does that respect mean for myself? And as I look at it that way, my balances are improving, and I'm adding more to that balance. Um, how Tell us about the difficulty and the internal, like, because that's torment when you cut your kid off and you have no idea if they're going to go die tonight. You have no idea if what you said is going to push them over the edge and they're going to go dump a bunch of pills or put a gun in their mouth. You just don't know.
Right. Yep.
How can you tell us and kind of walk us through that experience? Because that was not a quick result.
No. And I also want to point out, like, I call the 4 fundamentals for myself: boundaries, standards, values, and personal power. And how those 4, what I call those 4 sisters, hold hands, and you let go of any one of them and they all slide down. That's where you get into where I got into well, I'll lower my standards. There go my values. There goes my personal power. And I don't have any boundaries. And so when I created boundaries, there was the boundaries for myself, not for her. First of all, that's a really important distinction, because I'm not making a boundary for her. I'm making a boundary for myself, which is why I said I'm no longer available
Yep.
to, but I am available. I love you. I love you more than you love you right now. I get that. And I got to start choosing myself. I have to start choosing myself. Because if I don't, then I'm not there for anyone. Not, it's actually, I looked at it as me not having a boundary is really, really selfish, because I'm giving everyone the worn out, tired, depleted, resentful version of myself and wondering why I'm not happy. Well, this is also where horses help me realize they all have very clear boundaries with each other. And the boundary is, I only give you a warning once. Once. You do that again, I'm not going to ask you again. I'm going to tell you this now, you're going to see what's going to happen. And so then that personal boundary then becomes, it's not personal. It's about this other horse. It's about, this is how I operate in this herd. So for myself, when I'm needing to create boundaries and I'm needing to show up for myself, it was, I had a conversation with a girlfriend, and it was before I put up boundaries, and it was about giving my daughter money. And she said something about drugs, and I said, well, it's not like I'm buying her drugs. She goes, really? What do you think she's going to do with the money? And that whirled around in my head for probably about a month. And then I realized that I'm just buying her drugs. I'm just buying, I'm her dealer. I'm her dealer. And that's no one's fault but mine. I can't blame her for that. I'm her dealer. And that was one of the things that had the biggest impact for me, to just say, I have to choose something else. That doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And I can't do it by myself. I have to have support. I have to have support from not just other people, but really lean into my faith of, when it's hard, lean in instead of lean back. Lean in, lean in. And I also looked at, when you're learning something new, The only way you get good at it is doing it over and over and over and over and over again. And so each time she would ask me for something and I had to, you know, say, I'm no longer available for that. Now I'm a little bit stronger. Now I'm a little bit stronger. But it is me versus me. It's me versus me. And a lot of times when, even now, when I'm dealing with something that I'm running up against, what version of myself is showing up right now and saying, you don't have to do that hard thing. And I get to say, not today. Not today.
Mm.
No,
Yep.
I'm showing up for myself today. And by showing up for myself, now I can actually be a better parent for both of my daughters, especially the one that's dealing with addiction, because I'm showing her what's possible. She told me years later, you putting up boundaries was the best thing you ever did. Because it just showed me that this isn't where I want to go. This isn't what I want to do. So, yeah.
That's yeah. That's one of the hardest things to do is to cut your child off,
Hmm.
and um, and I would imagine it's much harder for a mother. I really would. Um, we men have a hardness about them when it comes to that, and it's like I don't know if it's because we're boys and we're used to pain and this too shall pass. I have no idea, but I think it has to do with that bond. It's just we don't want to see our kids suffer. Men don't either, but we have there's just a hardness within us that says no, get up. It's and that's where I find myself a lot of times is like I've been through it. I know you can stand. Get up. And so I've become very um brash, I guess, is what the word would be for it is, you know, and it's not intolerance or lack of love or compassion or empathy. It's that I believe and know that you have the strength and power to get the hell up.
Yeah.
And um, I don't know that I could, well, even women that I've spoken with that are in addiction or difficult things, I'm the same way. So um, so I know that's much harder for a mother to cut their child off, and um, because we do want to take that pain away. We don't want to see them suffer. The problem is that we oftentimes see them go further down the rabbit hole, and it, the years it adds to the addiction and the suffering now on both sides is astronomical. The risk is great to cut your child off. It's
It is.
it is a crapshoot that you can't predict, and that's where it's like, okay, we want to encourage parents to stand and be strong, um but you were led in a way that somebody else may not be led to figure that out, and that's the hard part is we have to figure that out. We have to have enough of
One of the other things that I figured out was I showed my daughter how to abandon herself.
Mm. Talk to me.
And by me not abandoning myself anymore, I was showing her how to do that as well. By showing up for myself, I show her how to show up for herself. Because that's
Nice.
generational trauma that women especially have learned for eons of just put everybody else first. Put everybody else
Yeah.
first. Your
Yeah.
needs don't matter. And then we're we get to this point to where we start to become overwhelmed just because we're under feeling. We cut ourselves off from our feeling to survive, and we start overthinking, and then that becomes a recipe for uh just incredibly difficult health challenges over long periods of time. that stress, that type of trauma and stress continually just breaks us down. And so we look for ways to, um, any way that I could find a way to disassociate working,
Yeah. To
just
cope.
work,
Yeah.
just stay busy. And that's a lot of times I can see that men do that as well, or women. The other thing is they dissociate with other things that aren't as harshly looked at as addictions, eating, shopping, um, binging to watch TV on social media. All of those things are just they're addictions as well. They just aren't as harshly looked at as what they are. And a lot of times when I'm working with women or men that are going through some type of addiction with their family is how you can't fool a horse. There's no there's no fooling a horse. They have 5 times the amount of mirror neurons that a human has. So I can look at you and know how you're feeling based off of how you look. Well, a horse has that ability times 5. So they know how you're feeling. You can't fool them. There's no fooling them. So when you show up and you allow yourself to be authentic, and this is where I am, this is where I'm feeling, they get to show you what else is possible. What else is possible besides this? Can you put this down? Can you let it go? Can you feel it? A lot of times it starts with, can you just feel it? Because we're resisting the feeling, which leads to the suffering.
Thanks for joining us on the first part of this episode, and part 2 will be coming out on Thursday. We'll be diving deeper into Lisa's life and how she works and what she does with horses. So we'll see you then.